And transparency is the key. I think if secrecy is involved in any type of way, then you're likely setting yourself up for failure. Prior to meeting my husband, God gave me gave me an outline on what I should do before I get married. And the first thing was, I got into Proverbs 31 to find out, what is a virtuous woman? What should she be? And the beginning of that chapter, King Lemuel's mother is telling him what kind of king he should be and what type of woman he doesn't need to associate himself with. And then she went from that to telling him what type of woman he should be looking for. And so what I did was, the first time I read Proverbs 31, I was like, who could be her?
Yes.
That's a lot. That's 10 on. And but as time rocked on, I just went from one verse to the next verse, and allowing me to prepare my heart and my mind, because now, believe it or not, growing up, I didn't want to be married and I didn't want children. So,
same here.
Well, we're a lot alike. I'm finding out today. But but once I got saved and got into that word and found out what God instituted and why he instituted marriage and what its design was for, and I said, okay, well, if I'm going to fulfill purpose, then I got to be married to do that. And if being in marriage and the confounds of marriage, children is what God is going to need for us to take dominion with, then okay, I'm game for it. But I needed to know what all that entailed. So line upon line, precept upon precept, each scripture, I studied it out. Okay, I'm going to have to be the first one up a lot of times. I may be the last one to go to bed. I'm going to be responsible for taking care of my household in the degree that I should. I need to raise my children in a godly way. I need to submit to my husband. I don't need to be making my husband feel ashamed. All of these things, cleaning up my house, all those things are a part of who we can be, because God in his word told us that we can. And so by the time I said, God, I'm ready, all of those things were not an issue in my mind anymore. I had a change of heart and a change of mind. And it was so important. And I had some godly examples before me, but not many. And just like you, there were people I was watching as well. And to see, how does this thing really work if you're doing this God's way? And I had to step outside of some beliefs that I had, that I grew up with. And I'm thankful, because submission is not an issue at our house. Following the leading of my husband is not an issue at my house, because I truly believe that your choice in a mate says more about your level of intelligence than it does anything else in the world. If you choose a dumb man, then how smart are you? If you choose a man that can't lead you anywhere, then how smart are you truly? If you choose a man that can't handle finances well, or can't parent children that you got all these questions about, then you're not as smart as you really think you are. Your choice of a mate, male and female, is a result of your own level of intelligence. And I think I did pretty good.
I think you did well too.
As did you, sister.
Your kids are, just phenomenal. Like I stated before, her son is in college. He's flourishing and doing well. Her daughter just entered into high school and she's doing well. But I think it's so important that we remind people that marriage it can be successful if you do it God's way. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. I was thinking a couple of days ago, I was like, God, I really want to do a show about this. And, I had been waiting on this particular person to get back with me, and they didn't. And then God brought you up in my spirit. And I was like, okay, God, what are we going to talk about? And he said, marriage, preparation. And then my mind went back to when you ministered for the first time. I think that was your first time ministering at Rightly, when you talked about marriage and preparation and the things that God had, spoken to you and your testimony, and how I was like, okay, God, I'm gonna do that same thing. And God blessed me with a similar result. So, and here we are 20 years later, talking about, how God has blessed your marriage and how he has blessed your home and your children. Because I've seen you guys, built a house from the ground up. I've seen you guys, just, waver through anything and everything, like you said, deaths that happened, that occurred in the family and in job situations. And even when you guys were, there was a period of time where your husband was laid off and you were working. And then there was a period of time where you were not working and he was working. your household was still running like seamless. You never seen, you getting frustrated. You never seen just, anything that people associate marriage with. Oh, well, y'all ain't gonna get along all the time.
And
this
so
gonna happen.
Not true.
This gonna happen. He gonna get on your nerves, and he gonna do this, and just things that we saw either on television or that we saw in relationships growing up. You were an example. Pastor and his wife were another example, because they took me under their wing when I was 16, 17 years old. And I hung out at their house. I was their child. They didn't have kids together, but I was like their child because I hung out at their house when I was out of school. There was a period of time where I was in between cars. Pastor used to come pick me up from college and take me to church because I stayed on campus. And so seeing his relationship, I had multiple perspectives of how marriages should work. But I just thank God that, you shared your testimony, because that night you probably was like, well, okay, God, I tell, but you have no idea. I think I was sitting next to Kirsten. I think it was either Kirsten or Evie that night that you ministered. And when you were talking about the things that, that happened and how you asked God, Lord, let him come knock on my door. And we was like, okay, we're going to do that too. It was high-fiving each other.
Oh, bless the Lord.
All excited because, when you are in a family where pretty much all the women are divorced and, dominant women, I can do this myself. If he ain't going to step up, I do it, and no slight on them. They operated in what they knew.
That's so true.
But when you know better, you do better. And so as God began to shift our perspective of what marriage is and what our role is, because, I've said on the podcast before, my grandmother was so strong when she got married that second time, because she was in an abusive relationship, her first marriage. Her second marriage, when the preacher said, and obey, she was like, I ain't saying it. And the preacher kept waiting for her to say it, and she was like, I ain't saying it. And she refused to say that she was going to obey her husband. And so he just had to keep on going with the ceremony.
Well, and I think, and I too came from that same type of situation where my grandmother raised me, and my mother died when I was 4 years old, and that was her mother. And so she raised me, and she took care of everything. She had a husband who was in the home in my formative years, but they separated. And so whatever needed to be done, she did it. And she taught me, you take care of yourself. We did our own repairs at the house. I even took a dryer to disconnected it, put a heating element back in and put it back together. I mean, because you had to know how to take care of yourself, and you take care of yourself and all these things. And that meant without any input from a man, because there was no man around. So you got to know how to be submissive. And we didn't grow up learning that. God had to teach us that. And so that's why I say it's so important. But I will say this, in not just that, God gave me some nuggets that I needed to weed and see. Is this the man that I sent to you? Because I needed to know. I was only going to do this one time, and it was going to last forever, because I knew it could, because the word of God told me it could. And there were some examples in my view who were still together, but I didn't want the bumps and lumps along the way type of marriage. I wanted the kind that we could be happy the whole time. Why did anybody have to go outside the marriage? Why did anybody have to withhold monies and all the type of things that used to happen in some people's marriages? No, God said it can be successful from the beginning if you do it my way. So, we were transparent. We did credit reports. I got my credit report. He got his credit report. We laid it on the table. And what I didn't say was we went through a major sickness in our marriage, because when we married, I was very sick. And I was surprised that he would even want to marry me, because I took him to my doctor and I said, explain to him what's going on with me so he can enter into this advisably. You don't want secrets going into a marriage. And so he went to the doctor with me, and the doctor, and it was a specialist, and explained to him what was going on. Then we went to my OBGYN and we talked to him, and a general practitioner. I had multiple doctors because there was something very serious going on with me. And he didn't shy away from that. And I asked him not long ago, I said, well, were you scared when you married me? Were you apprehensive to marry me being sick? And he said, no, because God told me he was going to heal you. I said, so you didn't think? He said, and that's what he called me. He was like, I knew God was going to heal you. He said, I had no doubt in my mind. He said, God told me you was my wife and I was going to be happier than I ever been. How could that be if you were not going to make it? And so he prayed me through and interceded me through those times at the beginning. But not only credit report and going to the doctor, we took HIV testing because although I hadn't dated in 3 years and he said he hadn't dated in 3 years, we need to know, are you bringing an illness of that degree into the marriage? He had been divorced, so he put his divorce decree on the table. There was a child support order, so I needed to know how much money going to be going outside the house. The household bills, we laid them out. And there were some things on my credit that weren't favorable, some charge-offs, some write-offs from my past. One of the first things he did when we got into the marriage, he cleared up my credit because we had somewhere to go financially in life. And we can't do that if your credit is jacked up. So he took care of that. He paid off my vehicle. He was able to do that. But the biggest thing we did was we went to church with each other. And we had counseling from our pastor, his pastor, and co-pastor and my pastor and his wife. And it wasn't no 1 or 2 days. It was weeks of counseling, meeting once a week with one pastor and once a week with the other pastor. So that's 2 sessions. And they were open and honest and transparent with us. And as we were with each other. And so there were no hidden agendas. I wasn't in it to just get what I could get from him, and he wasn't in to just get what he can get from me. It was for the long haul. And because we were so transparent, and we went to each other's families, I took him to my family, he took me to his family. He met all my major important family members in my extended family. I met all of his, and everybody approved. But I can tell you, the biggest thing about our relationship was we were both willing to walk away. If God had said, this is not the one, and we had missed him, we were willing to say okay and keep it moving because all we wanted was the will of God for our lives. And when I got ready I asked my pastor to go to lunch with me because I wanted to get his permission, because I wanted to know, you've seen him, now what do you think? And I was so scared because I said, if he said no, then I'm going to have to call this off. And he was really tickled because I think nobody had ever asked him before. And so he said, oh, yes, we approve. And when I say we, who, you and your wife, he said, no, me and God, we approve. And the same thing with our now pastors now, Pastor Kaiser and co-pastor Kaiser. We went to them. He went to them. Do you approve? Does she look like the one that God says is for me? And they said yes. And so we knew we had God's blessings and the man and woman of God that watched out for our soul's blessings and our parents' blessings, our family members' blessings. So it was right.
I know we're actually over, but I want to talk about the importance of knowing that you had God's blessings, because sometimes, and I know from my perspective, I did, like I said, I followed in your footsteps, the advice that you gave when you were ministering. When you know that God has said he's the one, no matter what issues may arise, this ain't nothing. We can handle this. Ain't nobody going nowhere. God got this. But sometimes people, they'll enter into marriage and they don't know if they have God's blessing. They'll be like, well, he good to me. He take care of me. My mom and my daddy like him. And then as soon as an issue arises, that, may cause a relationship to be destroyed. So talk about the importance of knowing, because I remember, I think it was either you or our co-pastor that said once, when you know that he's the one, it don't matter what happens in life. Nothing can say, okay, well, this it right here. No, this is the one that God has for me.
I think people marry sometimes for the wrong reason. He has a good job, or she fine, she pretty. In 20 years, a lot has happened.
Tell me.
And I can honestly say, in looking back on the pictures that I have, we don't look the same. Now, we still look good, don't get me wrong. God has been good to us, bless the Lord. But if money was the reason why I married my husband, we would have failed a long time ago, because as I said, there have been multiple job changes. God didn't fail us and we didn't lose anything, and I'm grateful. But if that's your motivation, you probably gonna be in trouble real soon. If how she look, how long her hair is,